talking about feelings today on CNN10, and I'm feeling like Fridays are awesome. I think most folks would agree with that, but how they're feeling about the U.S. economy is a little more nuanced. The unemployment rate, the share of the American labor force that doesn't have a job, is low. It's at 4.1%. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics records that as the lowest unemployment rate since the year 2000. Now, a new national survey by the Pew Research Center is giving us a sense of how the American public feels about the job situation. 50% of those surveyed say there are plenty of jobs to be found in their communities. That's the highest percentage of people who've said that since 2001, and it's increased 7 points since the summer of last year. But wage growth has been a consistent challenge for the economy, and 49% of the Americans surveyed said the cost of living is rising faster than their family's incomes. 40% say they're breaking even, 9% say they're getting ahead. That's all a slight improvement from last year, but it's about even with the survey results from 2 years ago. So how do Americans feel about the economy overall? 41% said conditions are good or excellent. That's an increase of 10 points since last December. 59% said they're poor or fair. And while those positive economic views have increased by 41 percentage points among Republicans, they've decreased by 16 percentage points among Democrats. So there appears to be a political divide on how American adults feel about the state of the national economy. The survey was taken in late October. Pew Research interviewed more than 1,500 adults to get the info. Some scientists are warning that this year's flu season could be a doozy. One reason is that Australia already had a bad one, and that can indicate that the Northern Hemisphere is next. Every year before the U.S. flu season starts in the fall, scientists develop a vaccine based on whatever strains of the flu they expect will circulate. It's not an exact science. Sometimes other strains of the virus spread more than expected. Sometimes the virus mutates. Last season's vaccine was 42% effective, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. That's not considered to be good enough. And 3 years ago, the flu vaccine was only 19% effective. Doctors still say the flu shot is our best protection against the virus and that it can keep some people's symptoms from being severe. 10-second trivia. Veterans Day originated with an observance that marked the end of what war? U.S. Civil War, World War I, World War II, or Vietnam War? The holiday observed on November 11th recalls Armistice Day, which marked the end of World War I. That armistice went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. The first Armistice Day observance was held a year later. In 1938, it became a national holiday in the U.S. But even though World War I was known as the war to end all wars, that wasn't how things turned out. So in 1954, after World War II had ended and fighting had stopped in the Korean War, the holiday known as Armistice Day was renamed Veterans Day. It's now a time to honor anyone who served in the U.S. Armed Forces. This year, 99 years after the World War I armistice, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has broadened the event to show appreciation for military families as well as servicemen and women themselves. Ceremonies and events will take place across the U.S. on Saturday. A ceremonial wreath laying at the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington National Cemetery will be held at 11 o'clock a.m. Australia, Britain, Canada, and France, some other countries whose troops fought in World War I, also hold veterans events at this time of year.
When I was laying there, I really, didn't think that I was going to make it. The Marines that were around me, I'm sure that they didn't think I was going to make it either. So, it really shows me that I'm here for a reason. What really made things clear for me was, looking back at my life up to, this point. I always did everything for myself, and I never really took a step back and said, you know what, I just need to start doing things for other people. And I knew that I could do that in the Marines.
My dad was furious. My dad didn't talk to me for like a solid month. He really hated it when I said I was going to leave to go in the military. I'm from Chicago originally. I'm from the South Side. He thought that, the scholarship and education, that stuff that I had would, get me out of the hood, which it did, but I wanted to get farther out than that. I had higher aspirations than that. I wanted to get out of the country. And the Air Force was supposed to be the most intelligent branch of the service. I went all over. I went to Scotland, I went to Wales, every time I had a chance to get off, I went somewhere. I traveled somewhere.
At 21, I was just finishing my nurse's training when World War II broke out. In fact, we were on the chow line when over the loudspeaker it was announced that the war had started. Being in the service made me grow up. I was a young girl, just lived home, and all of a sudden you're thrown out with all kinds of people and places that you read about but never saw. It was quite an experience. It's something I'm very happy I did, but I would never want to do it again.
My uncle was killed by a terrorist organization, and I knew at that point that I wanted to fight against those type of individuals. And so I graduated from Ranger School in October 23rd of 2009, and just about 6 weeks later I was in Afghanistan.
Growing up on South Shore of Long Island, you hear about West Point, which is where I was fortunate enough to go to college. I was a junior when 9/11 happened. I distinctly remember being in class. No one was teaching. We were just sitting there watching. Everyone was in shock. Most of the professors there are active duty military. Each one had made a comment to the effect of, cadets, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what this means, but your nation's going to call on you to go serve. I never thought I'd stay in for 10 years, but I enjoyed it very much so, and it was the best job I've ever had in my life and likely will ever have, so I look back on it with just the fondest memories.
Real-life Iron Man suit, a good start. 6 kerosene-fueled jets at your fingertips, getting better. Guinness World Record for the fastest speed ever set in a body-controlled jet engine-powered suit, 10 out of 10. This is Richard Browning and his amazing gravity-defying invention. And because he was able to jettison himself across the lake at 32 miles per hour, he achieved a new world record even if he got soaked right afterward. A challenge like that would test your mettle. It'd take nerves of steel, a stomach of iron, a budget of gold, and a silver of courage to go for a record that could be called platinum, even if it eventually tarnishes when someone zincs or foils it by getting the lead out with a quicker silver speed. I'm Carlos Oos for CNN10, and we hope your weekend is amazing.